All right, you know what? Congressman Tim Ryan will run for a higher office. The congressman who repeatedly toys with running for U.S. Senate or for governor says he wants to be president of the United States. In his daytime TV announcement, the Youngstown area Democrat said he can win back rural America and unseat Donald Trump.
I'm just going to be myself. I'm going to be for the things I've always been for. And I think that most progressives are going to see that as a candidate that can not only advance a progressive agenda, but also win. I can win Western PA, I can win Ohio, I can win Michigan, I can win Wisconsin, and that means Donald Trump is going back to Mar-a-Lago full time.
Dale Butlin, is he a serious candidate? Does he have a chance to get the nomination?
Tim Ryan is a good man, and he's a good congressman who has only a slightly better chance of being elected president than I do. You know, Tim, obviously, we shared Brian out of the race. Tim thought maybe he could be the voice of, you know, the working person. Yep. But he's got little national name ID, he's got no money, and he's got no realistic prospect for raising the $100 million or so that you need to be a viable candidate these days.
Why is he doing it? What's your guess?
I'm not sure. You know, everybody thinks they can be president. If you get to be in Congress or you get to be in the Senate, or even sometimes you don't even have to go that high because we have some mayors running and so forth. Everybody thinks they can do it. It's a crowded field, and people think, who knows, maybe I'll catch lightning in a bottle.
You know, I applaud anyone who wants to run for president, but I've never met a politician who hates their job as much as Tim Ryan. Every year, it's I might run for this, I might run for that, I might run for governor.
He loves it because he stays.
But yeah, but then he pulls back. But he's always looking for that next job. At the end of the day, he's doing this because he knows when redistricting comes around, his district's gone. Look, I believe that the people with the pen are going to end up putting a Cincinnati seat in for Democrats like they did in Franklin County for Joyce Beatty, and then they're going to dissolve his seat. So I think he's trying to raise his profile now, latch on to the future nominee somewhere, some way to find a future job on state government payroll or federal government.
He does say he's the Youngstown Democrat. He can appeal to the Trump voter. He won his district hugely, even much more than Sherrod Brown did in the last election. Lori, could he possibly catch fire?
Well, he's going to need some money to catch fire, and as Dale said, it takes $100 million or so to you know you have to raise the money to get out there, and I think that's going to be his biggest challenge. I think the bookmakers have it at like 51 odds for Tim Ryan, and you know,
so you're saying there's a chance.
There's a well, there's also, you know, there's what, like 17, 18 people are declared. There's 7 more on the fence. You almost need baseball cards or like one of those little Brady Bunch charts to keep track of who's running.
Running from the House is extremely difficult. There is a reason we have not elected a sitting member of the House president since James Garfield. Outside your district, nobody knows who you are. And it takes a lot of money to build the kind of name recognition that you need to.
And you don't have the network that a statewide candidate
And
has.
so this is probably a building block in that process. And he's putting it out there, seeing what the numbers tell him, and moving forward.
He may very well want to run against Portman next time.
Yeah, but he needs to build. He needs to build more public identity with, you know, people in the larger ring.
A couple problems. He was at one point in his career anti-abortion. Also was popular with the NRA. He's changed his positions on that, and that's going to come out in a Democratic primary should he become a contender.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's already just said, yeah, I changed my mind. And he did that in 2015, I think, and he doesn't back away from that. And so I think, which is the you know, personally, I think that's the way to go. Don't run away from it. Don't try to pretend like it didn't happen, and see how he explains himself. And he's pretty good at explaining himself, all things being equal, but first you got to be able to hear him. And I don't know if being on The View is going to launch him particularly well.
It's hard to compete with Joe Biden this week on the Democratic News Channel. What do we make about the controversy over how he is, quote, a tactile politician, likes to hug, likes to be, you know, perhaps too comfortable with...
It's nothing we didn't know. I mean, everybody knew that about Joe Biden. It's not a secret.
Some of the details we didn't know. I mean, how smelling of hair and kissing the backs of women's heads and things like that.
But Yes, Mike, you're absolutely right on all that, and Ann too. But keep in mind, there's 3 women now that have come out and made allegations against him. So forget just the goofy Twitter videos. Let's talk about the allegations that women are making, how they felt, because this is the era we're in now. We should have been in it a long time ago. So let's not dismiss the
2016?
allegations.
Wait.
Let's not dismiss the allegations. But you know what? As Republicans, we're going to stand back and watch the Democrats eat their own, because there's 17 other candidates, Elizabeth Warren and others, that are going to trash Joe Biden now.
But how can you criticize Joe Biden when your guy, Donald
I'm
Trump?
not. I'm stepping back. I'm going to let the Democrats do that.
Yeah, well, so let's talk about the allegations, as Mike says. This is from a guy who still supports a man who pays off porn stars, pays hush money to porn stars, and brags openly about grabbing women by their private parts. Joe Biden has never been accused by anybody of sexual misconduct. Even the women who have said that his touching of them made them feel uncomfortable, all of them have said there was nothing sexual, even remotely sexual about it. I've known Joe Biden for a very long time. I knew him when I worked in the Senate. Everybody who knows Joe Biden knows that this is who he is. And he does it with men, he does it with women, he does it with children. He touches, oftentimes if people are in a bad way, he comforts them. The irony of this whole thing is, in 40 years of public life, there's never been a whiff of sexual misconduct around Joe Biden. This is a man who, for 36 years in the Senate, avoided the cocktail circuit in Washington, got on a train every single night to go home to his wife and children in Delaware.
But Laura, it shows how this conversation has changed and how we look at these interactions really completely differently than we did even just 2 or 3 years ago.
It still seems strange to me, though. I mean, I think there's the Me Too movement has really heightened the sensitivities that everybody has. And I think that that's why this is a news story. But at the same time, it's strange to me that, the President of the United States has faced all kinds of allegations, lawsuits. His former lawyer arranged these hush payments, and somehow there's not a direct comparison being made.
Do you think Democrats are hurting themselves by making there's been allegations this all stuff has been fueled by the Bernie Sanders campaign and the folks who are coming out. There's politics behind some of these allegations. Are they hurting themselves in the long run by damaging a leading candidate?
I think they do. Ultimately, the party hurts itself if they damage this leading candidate, because he could be good for the party writ large going forward. But I can't imagine that they haven't gone through these kinds of issues with a fine-tooth comb. Now, by the way, he still hasn't announced. And I don't know whether that has anything to do with it, whether they're just pulling back and waiting for the dust to settle or not. But I agree with what Laura said. The irony is astounding that this is what we're talking about now. But the Me Too movement has made us more sensitive to a lot of things, and people's feelings do count. And he's acknowledged that, but he has not gone back and said, "I wish I hadn't have hugged that person," or done something that came natural to him.
There's got to be a sense of proportionality.
Right.
Not every offense is worthy of the death penalty. And I recognize the times have changed, and I think Joe Biden's age is a legitimate issue, and whether the party wants to nominate someone from his generation, that is a legitimate issue. But I think it would be a mistake and a shame if people as thoroughly decent as Joe Biden were drummed out of politics over something as innocent as this has been.